Over there, the theme song for American troops during World War I. If you like that video, you like the pictures, the sound for it, I've got the completed video on the YouTube playlist in case that interests you. But I figured that'd be a great way to start off today's lesson. Another thing to consider, of course, with the dealings of sickness and disease going on right now in the U.S., the issue that we're about to bring up, maybe you could argue say was the last time that America faced a huge pandemic issue, took place during this time period. In your textbooks, yes, I'm asking you to actually use your textbooks today. Turn in your books, please, to page 404. There's a pink box that says a little bird named Enza. I had a little bird. Its name was Enza. I opened the door, and influenza. Yeah, I know, really corny joke, but that was the poem that was used by many American children during this time. Please pause this video, read that box, and then once you have finished, you may unpause the video, then continue on with this lesson. Well, as you can see from the influenza, it was a real-life serious situation, killing millions and millions of people. Hopefully, obviously, that hasn't happened yet in this time. Hopefully it won't happen, but recognize in the past it has. As we get going, though, let's talk about American forces over there. Letter A, the American Expeditionary Force. The soldiers were often nicknamed doughboys. First of all, doughboys. It had been a popular nickname for the U.S. infantry as far back as the Mexican War of the 1840s. No one's really sure. I looked it up. I tried to figure this out. But no one's really sure where the name come from. We just know it's been around since the 1840s, at least. Although the war was declared in April of 1917, the first troops didn't arrive until summer, and most didn't arrive until the spring of 1918. The minimum training time for a soldier was about 3 months. Sorry for that interruption. Continuing on, the AEF was commanded by General John J. Pershing, who was under the Supreme Allied Commander Ferdinand Foch, a Frenchman. The British and French had been fighting for over 3 years and weary of war. But with the arrival of Americans, or the Yanks, it was a welcome relief. Foch sought to simply replace weak British and French regiments with the new U.S. troops under British and French commanders. Pershing disagreed, believing the U.S. would lose morale if they were mixed with the European forces. So make sure that you know the leaders of the Americans was Pershing, but the leader of all of the Allied troops was Foch. So, end result was the U.S. troops remained separate and were assigned their own fronts to defend. Look in your books, please, at page 407. 407 shows you a map of the war in Europe in the year 1918. Refer to that map as we continue to talk about some of the battles that will take place. Letter B, doughboys in action. First thing, you got to understand how the war was going at this point. By 1917, the end of 1917 into 1918, Communist Vladimir Lenin had taken Russia out of the war and had quit. Now remember, had Russia been a part of the Central Powers or the Allies? Yeah, the Allies. With Russia out of the war, Germany could now focus its entire force against the West. So in 1918, a new German offensive sought to reach the English Channel and capture Paris. By June, they had reached the Marne River and were about 50 miles from Paris. That's when the U.S. and the Allies counterattacked. U.S. victories at the battles of Chateau Thierry and Bella Wood stopped the German advance. Paris was now out of danger. Foch and the French planned and conducted a massive assault at Amiens in August. The German general Ludendorff called it the Black Day of the German army. Despite heavy German losses, the war was not over. More Americans arrived, about 250,000 a month, while Germany continued to lose. Probably the most important American victories occurred at the battles of Saint Mihiel and the Argonne Forest. Saint Mihiel, over 500,000 doughboys, an air corps of 1,500 planes, and 3,200 French and American artillery pounded the German army. The battle lasted about 48 hours. 2 weeks later, Foch gave the U.S. the very difficult task of taking the Argonne Forest. They faced hidden barbed wire, steel, and concrete against an enemy entrenched and protected. Historians have called the battle the Meatgrinder Offensive. Recognizing, of course, this being American lives at stake, it's a very disconcerting name, the Meatgrinder Offensive. And it was called that because of the heavy losses. However, the doughboys were victorious. Turn your books, please, to page 408. And on your own, please read the pink box about Sergeant Elvin C. York. Once you have finished, please unpause the video and continue. By August, the German line was broken. By September, the German commanders knew all was lost. Fact of the matter was, some opinion could, there are two opinions that go about this war. One was that American involvement really didn't matter, that the Allies were going to win the war anyways. America just kind of sped up the war. That's one view that's taken. I generally don't agree with it. Another view that is taken is that the Germans could have won World War I if it weren't for the fact the U.S. got involved. I tend to lean in that direction on my take on this war. So if it weren't for the U.S., who knows? World War I might have ended differently. Fact of the matter is, at 11 o'clock on the 11th day of the 11th month, which is November, in 1918, Germany signed an armistice to end the war. Very interesting how it was done, on 11th hour, 1918. By the way, that is a very testable date, so make sure you know that. The date became known as Armistice Day. After World War II and the Korean War, the holiday name would be changed. What was it called? Yeah, you guessed it, Veterans Day. End result, about 8 million people had died worldwide. The U.S. itself had lost about 115,000 men. Nearly 20 million had been injured worldwide. The U.S. had about 200,000 injured soldiers. Although U.S. casualties were light compared to those of the major powers, Americans had now known the heartache of war. Many people hoped that this had been the war to end all wars, and the war to make the world safe for democracy. Many Americans believed that they had fought for noble goals. Obviously, this was not called World War I at this time. They were hoping this war would eradicate war, make the world safe for democracy. Of course, we know that they will be mistaken. That's all we're going to cover for today. In your homework, in your activities book, please turn to page 173. On page 173 in the activities book, 173, 174, 175, it has some more detailed information about the heroism of Sergeant Elvin C. York. Please read the information, answer the 9 questions that follow the reading, and that'll be your homework. Please make sure you remember, guys, to turn in your homework with your packet when you come into school to pick up your next week packet. That's all we have time for today. Be good, do good.